Right, and a little point about side effect-free code, and this is one of those points that is non-specific to Perl 6. But here is one using a Perl 6 example. Let's say I have a module name, and I want to, I have a path to a module, and I want to create a module name out of it. So here in 3 steps, I remove the lib directory at front, and I remove the PM or PM6 ending at the end, and then I turn on the slashes into double colons, and in the end I return the path. Except now it's no longer a path, so the variable is really wrongly named, and this is one of many code smells of this piece of code. One problem with it, for example, is that it only accepts variables that are read-writable, so it doesn't accept constant strings, for example. It will blow up on that. We could solve that part with, here's one way to write it instead in Perl 6. We have a method form of substitution, but it's essentially the same code. Right, this isRW part is really problematic, and in Perl 6 it's a little bit harder to do this for exactly that reason. You could do this copy instead, which means that you don't modify the original variable, but you clone it before and then modify it. But the problem still remains that it's not a path by the end of this subroutine, so we have to do something else. So we do this instead. Now it's neither isRW or isCopy. We just take the path and modify it along the way, and then we return the final result. It's kind of a good sign. This is a one-liner, spread out over 3 lines, but still a one-liner. And there are several advantages to doing non-assignment code. In this case, you see the assignments here. It says dot equals. That means assign to the path the result of this substitution. This one has no equal signs, so no assignments. And the programmer becomes happy out of this because it's much easier to reason about non-side effects code. And even the compiler becomes more happy about this because at any given point you can suddenly start to inline things and do funny optimizations of the code that you couldn't before because there were side effects in the code. So write side effects free code. It's more modular and more flexible. Callbacks. We've seen them in, for example, this situation where you send in a list to sort, but not only that, you send in a comparator which tells the sorting routine how to sort things, which ones score to the left and which ones score to the right in the final result. It's a very powerful technique, especially because the comparator has its own environment from where you define it, so you can basically send in foreign things through this comparator. That's what's called a closure. The closure keeps references to where it came from, and that can be used and exploited in various ways. But it doesn't have to be. It can be much simpler than that. For example, in this case, we sort of abstract meaning API out of, in this case, piece moves. So we define above, below, right up, left up as simple coordinate transforms, and then we can talk about this night move, for example, go 2 steps up and 1 step to the right in a much simpler way than what we could before. And you see we declared these with my, so they are valid within the current lexical block. So making a mini language in this lexical block. Here's a simple one, which might still not be obvious to people who are coming to Perl. You have a method with a couple of if statements which check the parameter that you send in for various conditions. Why not instead just make different move methods which already have that parameter type check inside the signature? That makes for much shallower code with less indentation. And also it hides unnecessary plumbing in the form of conditionals. So you actually have to write fewer lines of code as well. The actual code is hidden inside these types that you have declared. And on the topic of multi-methods, let's say you have this type hierarchy of global classes, and you want to manage a global in some way, and you have this if-else-if chain of things where you match against. And people go to you and say, oh, it should be a switch statement, of course, with when types instead. So you don't have to do the smart match explicitly, it's done for you. And then you can sort of make the variable global here implicit and just put it in $_, and you don't even have to write the given. The given statement and the when statement in Perl 6 are orthogonal, so you can use one and not the other, and it still works. Given simply means set this value into $_, and when simply means check $_ against this, and they're completely independent. And then instead of having a default at the end and dying, you just add the type shape into the signature. So you see, we lose a lot of code in this way, and everybody's happy. There's a general rule which I hear sometimes, and which I found to be true myself, that you should declare things as late as possible and in as small a scope as possible, because variables are on some level evil and they will destroy your brain and your code, so you want to minimize their use. And this goes for subroutines as well, and types in general. So I find increasingly that I tend to put a sub inside a method. By the way, this is a change from Perl 5 to Perl 6. In Perl 5, subs are scoped. In Perl 6, they are my scoped, which means that they go out of the lexical scope as the method goes out of the lexical scope. Yeah. So the sub is only visible from within the method, which is exactly what you want, and very convenient. Here you see this path to module name subroutine again, which is actually used in a recent project of mine. And we can use it first and then declare it later in the method, and that works because subs are discovered at compile time. So this is a really convenient way to sort of minimize the scope of your code. And you should treat types in the same manner. Here's an alien class which is local to the invade, so I guess because the aliens want to keep a low profile. And this is done with my class alien, as you see there, because classes by default are ours.